So, this being the day after the 4th of July, my theme for the month is Let Freedom Ring. And today's topic is reflections. I want to spend some time in reflection of the meaning of that phrase, let freedom ring. How it relates to each one of us individually, how it relates to us in community, in our beliefs, even in our behaviors. Is that phrase familiar to you, let freedom ring? Have you heard that before? Well, there are a number of different places where you might have heard it. The first one is, there is a song entitled My Country 'Tis of Thee, and the lyrics to the first verse of that are, My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. I think that's probably the first time I ever heard it was in that song as a child. Or maybe some of you remember that phrase from a talk that Martin Luther King gave one time. And the part of the speech in which he referred to this goes like this. When we let freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we'll be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. There are also poems and quotes about the Liberty Bell. One of them that I found online goes like this. Ring loud that hallowed bell. Ring it long, ring it long. Through the wide world let it tell that freedom is strong. So yesterday was a holiday in these United States which celebrates our freedoms here. We could make a list of those. Many of us probably include those whenever we make entries in our gratitude journals or other types of gratitude work that we do. And others may offer a prayer or an affirmation in thanksgiving for those freedoms or the desire to add to them. Yesterday was also a time to reflect, if we chose to, on all that has gone into our being able to exercise our own freedoms and in this current moment. The beliefs, the practices, the sacrifices that our ancestors and the ancestors of those around us provided to bring us to this moment in time. You see, that's all a part of who and what we are too. Sometimes we get caught up on the familial things and the pluses and minuses that those are in terms of contributing to our subconscious. And we aren't particularly alert to that collective consciousness you've heard me talk about so many times. That is the composite of everybody else's around me, everybody else's subconscious. And this is where that comes into that. Is that in some respects I am really not cognizant of all that's gone into the freedoms that I have. This wide variety, wide and deep and high variety of freedoms that I have. And what all went into that? I know what's happening in the present day. I can read it in the newspaper. I can see it on television. I can listen to it on Twitter. There are a myriad of ways that I can know what's happening now. But there's so much more than that. And that more than that is what has contributed to where you and I are today, and where the world, as a group of believers of various thought processes, are as well. So, on a day like yesterday, we have an opportunity to express our gratitude for how we got to this point in time. Because for each of us, it's now in our current consciousness. And for most of us, we'd like that to be the case for others as well. Except, as we know, our job is to develop it within our own consciousness, and then to make that available as an opportunity for others to consider. Because, as we know, with negative ideas, it's very difficult to get people to buy into those. It's also very difficult to get people to buy into what we consider a positive idea until there is reason for that person to see it as positive. So that's a process, isn't it? And it's a process that you and I, for the most part, have been largely spared because of those who came before us to develop that for us. So I was reminded yesterday that each one of us stands on the shoulders of those who came before us, exploring what they saw as possibilities, and that we get to proceed from that base of knowledge and understanding. And I hadn't really thought about it that way. You know, we have a jump start on a consciousness of acceptance, a consciousness of diversity, a consciousness of like-mindedness, yes, and being willing to share, but not insistent on sharing with those who aren't yet ready to share that. So it's really humbling when we take the time to reflect on that, especially when we focus on the good stuff and we commit to carrying on that legacy. Commit to carrying on the legacy of the good stuff. What works in our lives, what brings us love and joy and peace and happiness and enthusiasm and a sense of well-being. So even though we may occasionally recognize that the current state of affairs, to coin a phrase, is not without its flaws, we can also recognize, though, that the great improvements and advancements from the days of our ancestors, and then to reflect on what our call to action is in this present time. And you've heard me talk before about so many of the younger generations now come into this plane of consciousness, this thing we call life on planet Earth. They come in at a much higher level. And it's not just that they know how to run an iPad and an iPhone. I mean, a higher consciousness of spiritual understanding. And I'd like to think that a part of that is they're coming in on our shoulders just like we came in on the shoulders of those before us. And so there is that opportunity to start at a higher level. That's not something to worry about. That's something to rejoice in. I had a conversation Friday afternoon with a 13-year-old boy over here at the pool. And it's one of the most exhilarating conversations I've ever had. This is a wise soul. We used to call them old souls. This is an indigo child, if you're familiar with that phrase. This is a young man who came in at a very high level of consciousness. And he talks in spiritual terms without even highlighting. I mean, it's who he is. It's in the cells. It's wonderful. I wish I could tell you his name, but that would be giving it away. And that's divulging your confidence, and I don't want to do that. But suffice it to say, when you start to look around at our younger generations, be alert to this, because they are wise in so many ways. What we would say in my generation and my mother's generation, wise beyond their years. Only they're not. That's their years now. So one of our major freedoms in this society, where a liberty bell rings out our freedom, is that we can believe what we choose to spiritually, as long as we do no harm to others, never at anyone else's expense. So it's not only a freedom for me and for you, it's a freedom for those we don't agree with and who don't agree with us. And you see the difference there from so much of history and from a portion of our world as we currently know it. So it's a freedom for you, it's a freedom for me, it's a freedom for those we don't agree with, and for those who don't agree with us. And any one of the ways we can do that on a day-to-day basis is to practice what we profess: understanding, compassion, peace, loving kindness, patience, generosity, givingness. And to remember, not everybody is at the same level of development. If you remember back to psychologist Abraham Maslow, remember those days? Abraham Maslow had I thought I brought it with me, but I guess I didn't, had a hierarchy of needs that the human being goes through. And at the very entry level is the physiological, which is basic needs. It's where most of the human race has started. Air to breathe, water to drink, food to eat, the ability to sleep, what's called homeostasis, which is the ability to adjust to the environment, temperature-wise, for example, those kinds of things. Very basic needs. When one is at the very basis of, or bottom of that triangle of the hierarchy of needs, one typically would not be spending a lot of time seeking spiritual wisdom, because one is consumed in staying alive. And so on up this hierarchy of needs, we go to the highest level, and it's depicted in a triangle, and you can go online and see it. The highest needs level is when one has gained recognition, has developed his or her creative tendencies, has developed a pattern of morality, a belief system, a set of principles. There's a lot of time and room in there then to hone our spiritual and our metaphysical prowess. And the reason I tell you this, and then there's 3 steps in between, basic and the highest level in Maslow's hierarchy. The reason I tell you this is because there are people who are still living at that physiological level where they are, all of their time and energies are consumed with finding food to eat, clean water to drink, a safe place to sleep, and clean air to breathe. So they're not going to be responding at the same level to the spiritual questions of the universe. And yet, they have value in life. And so we want to be able to not differentiate from setting people separate, but to recognize that not everyone is at the level I am at spiritually. And then to recognize that there's always someone whose spiritual development is beyond mine and at a level to which I aspire. And know that this individual does not see me as any less because I'm not there yet. So this is a really important thing to understand in our spiritual beingness, having this human experience. So wherever any one of us is on this continuum of spiritual unfolding, it's important to recognize that there's always more to be expressed, and that change occurs in us in each step along the way. I heard something this morning that I've not heard expressed in that manner before, of consciousness, mindfulness, and emotions. So I can take that now and work with that to bring a new level of understanding. And that's how we live life, when we're willing to learn and willing to grow and willing to expand. We are open to these possibilities and recognize that there's never any coincidence when it occurs in our presence. I want to share with you, and I'm sure that you're probably already well aware of this, that one of the things that new people coming here to be with us on Sunday morning comment about to me is our candle lighting service, that Candles of Faith ceremony that we do at the beginning of the service. I can really relate to that because the first time I heard that, I was incredibly moved by it. And I still am. And you notice I still use the sheet that's got all of the 10 different steps in it. And I do that purposefully so that I don't leave any of them out, and so that I don't mix up any of the specifics of each faith, because there's something different in each one, as you've noticed, with the exception of New Thought, which is the compilation of all of them. So it's an ongoing reminder to all of us to honor the good in others. You see, these are spiritual followings, some of which are very different from our own. And yet we can honor that because that is a step along the way for the individuals who are active in it. Twyla and I are also having an opportunity each week in our Life is Worth Living Well workshop up at Tutu's house to meet and get to know people from several different faiths, religions, spiritual teachings. And we're all working together in that group in supporting each other spiritually. There's also a group down in Kona, the Pacific Rim Foundation, which offers a non-sectarian get-together every month, which Eddie Cash Dudley and I go to often when our schedules permit. And the participation there is of many different faiths. It's inspiring, it's educational, and it's fully enfolded in love and respect. They bring a lot of different ideas in, so that you can hear the spiritual development. For those of you who saw the DVD with One Voice, that's much like that. You're hearing the path of truth coming from this wide variety of spiritual backgrounds. So I could go on and on about these opportunities, many of which you know about and may already be participating in. And if you know of something you haven't heard us mention here, tell us about it so we can share it with our folks. We can put it out on the website. We can put it on the email that goes out each week about our midweek gathering. And there's also an email that goes out each week about the workshop up at Tutu's house. So we're touching a lot of people now with these ideas, and we want to continue to share and be open where that's concerned. So during the rest of the month, we'll talk about some of the other freedoms that we participate in, that we share, that we aspire to, that we perhaps find elusive or even out of reach.
The title of the talk today is
So be
Positive
thinking
Power.
about that. You know, use the energy of
for
this
the
4th
month is
of
what
July
is this about a
celebration
feel-good
holiday
religion or philosophy or
to
way of
light
life?
you up like those fireworks last night, and
Let me ask you a question.
allow yourself.
Have you ever walked
to
into a room
try something
and
new?
felt uncomfortable?
Yeah, we saw two new.
Have you ever driven down a street
Some of us did.
and
Saw
felt lost,
two new
even though you knew where you were?
displays last night. One was a heart.
How about the times you've said to yourself,
And the other
"Yeah, I
side
don't
effects."
really want to do this,"
So, you know,
or go
things are
there.
changing, even in
But you've done
stuff
it
like
on-
fireworks,
anyway.
which you'd think were
only to
the
have the
same
car break down on the
all
way,
over.
or the place
Might
be
not.
closed when you get there,
Didn't
or
have to
you're
look
stuck
for
in
parking
traffic, which just makes you even
So one
madder.
of the
Here
responsibilities
you are,
that,
you didn't want to
that
go in the
goes
first
with
place, and now you
freedom
can't
is
get
caring
there.
for it.
Fascinating
And
message
about-
in that one, isn't there?
It's about being a steward of this gift.
A little girl
Not
was sitting
everyone has
pensively
been
in
so
Sunday
blessed
school
in
class.
life to have the freedoms.
This was the
of
kind of
spiritual
Sunday school you and I
practice
may
and
have
so
attended
many
when
other
we
things.
were small children.
In the Hawaiian
At least it
language,
reminds
there's
me
a
of the
word
kind I
which
have-
speaks to what I've been talking about this morning. And I want to share it with you now, and you probably all know the word anyway. The word is kuleana. And kuleana is one's personal or one's personal sense of responsibility. The person possessing kuleana believes in the strength of this value and will be quick to say, I accept my responsibilities and I'll be held accountable for them. Kuleana speaks of a value, a way of thinking. And when I add the additional meaning of privilege to this statement, the perspective changes to how honored I am to be able to have this responsibility. Wow, gives me chicken skin. How honored I am to have this responsibility. This is a privilege. That's not a burden, not by any means. It's a privilege to let freedom reign. And so it is.